Whether you're upgrading your YouTube studio or maybe starting your very first one, I've learned some game-changing tips over the years that are going to help you maximize any space and make your videos look great. So this is your pretty standard second bedroom in an apartment. We're going to be taking it from a boring room that looks like this to a YouTube studio with multiple angles that looks like this. Special shout out to Uplift Desks who've provided some key components to this studio. More on them later, and I'll link those Uplift Desks as well as anything we talk about in this entire video down below. Look, you don't need to have nearly the amount of gear that we're about to get into to make your videos look great. My channel is about cameras, which two things happen there. One, tend to accumulate a lot of gear that we want to be able to use. And two, we tend to have a higher standard, maybe a bit unhealthy, but a higher standard for how things look and how they sound. Benefit of that for you today is as we're going through literally everything in my studio for what works well for me to make these YouTube videos is that you're probably going to pick up some tips to help you out in your space. One of my favorite things about this new YouTube studio is having a screen that's displaying my outlines for all of my YouTube videos directly above my camera. I used to use my laptop for my outlines, but the challenge with that was that it was on the desk, and so sometimes it was in frame, so having to find that perfect position where it was convenient to look at, but also not being on frame was always tricky. And I'm just screen sharing from my phone, just Google Docs. I put Google Docs in dark mode so that it's not pushing any weird bright white light onto the scene, because usually like TV quality light, not so good, but dark mode eliminates that. A common theme for today is going to be these magic arms. And I like the ones from Impact a lot. You can get the Manfrotto magic arms. They're like a little bit overpriced in my opinion. I use these Impact ones. They work just as good. These things are literally everywhere in here, and the big benefit of them is I can make these really micro adjustments to things and get things just right, which I'll probably say micro adjustments a lot today too. So this rig is probably one of the most important things in the entire studio. I think I have like 90% of what I need to make these YouTube videos on this rig. And it's really just some heavy duty light stands with a crossbar up top that I have running parallel to the desk. Does mean it has a footprint on the ground, which maximizing these small spaces, footprints on the ground like tripods and light stands aren't ideal. The reason I did it this way and that I didn't run like a varipole up top from like wall to wall parallel to the desk, the reason I didn't do that is because one, I like having the ability to do some side mounting next to the desk. It's also really easy when this thing is completely rigged out just to move it like a little bit forward or backward if you need to, if you're like making small adjustments to your frame. If I had like a varipole up top, wall to wall up here, I have to take everything down, move that varipole. Benefit of that is I wouldn't have any footprint with a varipole where I get the footprint out of this, but I found this to be a really good, important tool to have for this like A-roll main angle YouTube shot. But I do have some varipoles in here, which we will talk about in a second, but let's take a look at this rig and all the attachments a little bit more in depth. I can't emphasize the benefits enough of running a monitor because you can use the back of your camera, but then you're kind of limited to making sure the camera is really close to you so you can actually see the back of the camera, but then you're kind of limited on what lenses you can actually use. I have a longer lens that I'm using for my main angle, so being able to have my image displayed while I'm here, while I may be changing some lighting and seeing what that's doing real time is key. This is the Ninja 5. You probably don't need a Ninja 5 if you're just using it for a monitor. I also do a lot of things on my channel for cameras where I'm recording the menu of the camera, which this monitor specifically can do. I'm using Sony cameras and they just put out a new app, the M&C app, which allows me, which I'm monitoring this shot you're looking at right now. But I can also use that like an iPad for a monitor, which is pretty cool. So whether you're using a camera that has an app that can do actual displays to your phone or to an iPad, or you pick up a monitor, I'll put some links down below of some more affordable ones versus this Ninja 5 that still do the job of monitoring the shot from a distance. One of the most important things on any YouTube setup is going to be the actual key light, the main light that I'm using to light myself. I'm using the Amaran F22X. Not only is this light really cool because of how slim it is, meaning it doesn't have a huge like soft box, a lot of depth to it. It's really slim, which helps out for looking minimal, but also not being in the actual shot. That can be kind of tricky, getting your light source as close to you as possible, but not also being in the actual frame of the shot. So this is really good for that. I also love having a bicolored light, which this is. That's the X part for Amaran's F22X. The bicolor piece means that I can change the temperature from cool to warm. When I load up the Sidus Link app and show you how all this lighting is working off of one app, I'll show you where that is incredibly valuable to get the colors and tones that you want on your subject versus your background. But F22X connected to, you guessed it, a magic arm so that I can make, yes, micro adjustments and get it exactly where I want it to be. Usually 45 degrees to the left for me, left or right's fine. 45 degrees to the left, 45 degrees above. And that's all set up. Again, Magic Arm allows me to do that pretty quickly. Next, this is another Amaran light up here. This is a tube light. I have this set to the exact same temperature as my key light. The reason I have this is, one, it helps like light my hands of the scene, which it can get kind of dark on these darker desks if you just have a key light. The other thing I like this for is when I do my top-down shots, it serves as a really good kind of flat light for top-down style shots. Key light isn't going to do a good job of that unless I tilt it straight down, but then nothing's lighting me. So if I'm running an overhead shot plus a main angle at the same time, this is pretty key, having that. And I have the 45-degree grid on it. So essentially all that's really doing is it's directing the light straight down. If I didn't have that on, it would kind of spill out to the sides pretty heavily. Becomes an issue if it's a different temperature versus my background here, which is like a pure white. It's a different temperature than what my backlight is. I'm going to have mixed lighting. It's going to be a whole mess. So this grid allows the light to come straight down exactly and only where I want it. Audio. I used the Deity S-Mic 2S. I think this is a fantastic microphone for most people who are doing a similar YouTube style shot. I usually get that just like, I don't know, about a microphone away from my face when I'm recording. So it's as close as possible for good audio quality with also not being in the frame of the shot. This is on another magic arm here that's connected to the crossbar up top. I also have another little tiny magic arm that's done by, I think this one's by Falcam, and that one just allows me, so two on here. I found with mics, like getting it just right, kind of need a lot of adjustability in there. So I double up the magic arms there. It helps me a ton. Now, one of my biggest lessons from doing this, I'm 100% self-taught, so I didn't learn this in school, is that my XLR cable, which is my audio cable, this orange cable, right? I never want this cable to touch any power cable whatsoever. You're going to get a lot of feedback. Even running high quality cables, high quality everything in here, I still would get feedback in my audio, like a buzzing that was incredibly annoying and hard to edit, and kind of would ruin a lot of shots for me. If my audio cable, like this XLR cable, was touching any power source, and the amount of lights in here, for example, there's a lot of power cables everywhere. I make sure that this cable touches nothing besides the connection to the mic, the crossbar, and then the interface where it's actually connecting, and that's it. So if you got audio issues, it might be because your audio cable is crossing some kind of power cable somewhere in your setup. In this next piece here, I use this is my audio interface. So that same orange cable that we just saw, I'm running to the Zoom F3 recorder. I love this recorder because it records in 32-bit float. Essentially just means I don't have to worry about my audio levels whatsoever. I can just record, get my audio, pull it into post, and whether it's recorded too low or too high, I can make it sound just right. So no clipping, or no, when you bring the audio up when it's really low, you'll typically get a lot of noise. It won't do that either. So I love 32-bit float for that reason. I also have that running with constant power, so I don't have to worry about batteries because I hate dead batteries. Have that running constant power with this USB-C cable. I'm not going to show this on camera because it's really boring, but that's running to a surge protector. Another big lesson I learned with audio is that whatever power delivery my audio recorder is getting, it has to be getting clean power. Otherwise, same thing, I'll be getting some feedback. I don't remember the model, but I got this Monster, I think it's a Monster brand, like surge protector, and it is delivering 100% clean power from the building to make sure that this is not giving me any feedback at any point, whether it's this not crossing any power cables or this power source cable here, making sure that that's running into a surge protector that's delivering whatever clean power is. And then we have the desk itself, which this is the Uplift black bamboo on some white stands. I think it looks fantastic in the studio. One of the best things I like about these desks though, besides how ridiculously high quality they are, which actually makes a difference. If you have a low quality desk, I've had this in the past where you're like pushing on it and it's squeaking or making noise. That can be kind of annoying when you're trying to just have like a clean YouTube shot and the desk is either moving too much or it's like loud and squeaky is kind of annoying. These things are fantastic. They're super high quality and they look really good. And you can have the ability to configure them however you want to. Like when you're working like a small YouTube space like this, I have another desk I'll talk about, which is a really cool one too. But you can decide like on their website, like how big you want it to be. Like there's so many choices for how big or small you want the desk to be to make sense for you. Because for me, for this main angle, I like a desk that fills the entire frame and doesn't like cut off on the sides. But one of the coolest things about these desks for me is the adjustability, not only for the obvious of making it like a standing desk, like bringing it up and making it a standing desk and changing your position. And there's a ton of benefit there. What I like about that, here's the word again, micro adjustments on the frame. If I want to actually just change how much of the desk is actually showing by like a 1/4 inch, I can do that with these tiny adjustments. And you have these presets where if you know that like you want your desk height to be a certain height for your YouTube shot, this is how it is for me. I just click number 1 and it's going to go to the perfect height that I want it to be for this main angle. So this photography background paper not only acts, when I obviously lower it, acts as like blackout blinds if I want to film during the day, really anytime, and just make sure that the lighting in here is not catching anything weird from the outside, any tones I don't want. So when these come down, it obviously is going to block out all that light and just let me artificially light it however I want to. But what these also work well for, whether I just have black and gray here, they also work really well for thumbnail backdrops. And back on the benefit, at least in my studio, of having my key light here on these magic arms, it's a really quick adjustment for me to simply turn that light around, and now that's the main light source for that thumbnail that I want to take. The camera I use for my main angle is the Sony a7C Mark II with the Sony 50 1.4 lens. I love this lens. It's a little tight for in here. I would recommend if you're just starting out to probably use more of a lens that has like a zoom to it as opposed to a prime, because we can do to your frame, a word we haven't heard today, is you can make micro adjustments and get the exact frame that you need. And I think that's a little bit more user friendly. The zoom we have in the studio is the 28-75 2.8 G2 by Tamron, but I like shooting with primes a lot, which is why I like this 50mm for my main angle a ton. We also have a 35 prime. I think this is Sony's most underrated lens of all time, but it's their 35 f1.8. It's a little bit older at this point, but the autofocus is fantastic, and it's a nice like wider option for a prime than that 50. Another camera in the studio is the Sony ZV-E1. We got the 20mm f1.8 connected here now. It's kind of became our B cam. I mean, the A7C II, it's phenomenal as a video camera. It's also a really good vlog setup, the ZV-E1 with the 20mm f1.8. But the A7C Mark II is the main angle camera. It's also phenomenal for thumbnails. But this camera here is ZV-E1, fantastic video quality. We like this one in the studio a ton, particularly as a B cam. And the camera we're filming on this entire studio right now is a Sony ZV-E10 Mark II. It's a crop sensor camera, has a Sony 15mm G lens on there, the 15G 1.4. One thing I do like about that camera, because it's a crop sensor camera, when you put a full frame lens on it, like this 35, this 35 becomes almost like a 50 on that camera, crop sensor camera, full frame lens. Usually it's like times 1.4-ish. So 35 times 1.4 becomes about a 50mm on that camera. It might be a little bit wider or tighter than that, but about a 50. As a B cam for the main angle shot, I usually hook this up to it and get almost like 2 similar 50mm shots. Up top, I do have some varipoles. Those are just essentially tension arms that are running from each wall. And those are nice. I talked about it a little bit earlier. They're nice because You don't have to worry about any footprint on the floor. For me, the downside, they're kind of hard to move around, so I like kind of keeping them where they're at once they're up. But I have those running perpendicular to the desk where my main rig is running parallel. Just found that having that latitude for lighting goes a long way, as opposed to putting it all in like one spot and trying to get it all to look right. So the first light that's up here is just my backlight. It's just the Amaran 100D with the aperture lantern softbox on it. I like using a lantern like this because it's going to disperse the light and make it much more soft back here, as opposed to like some kind of reflector that's just going to make a lot of hot spots. But backlights are key for getting the exposure on your background that you want. You can do this a lot of different ways. Like window light can do a lot here too, but I have found that having a really good backlight just makes the scene a lot more dynamic. So I'm sure you've been wondering in the video, but what is that like orange slashes on the wall? That's just a gobo light. So I have the Amaran 60X, which is a bicolor light, so I can change how orange or maybe white those tones are. It's the Amaran 60X with the spotlight. I think it's SE. I'll link it all. But I think it's a Spotlight SE, which allows me to put those gobo inserts, just little inserts that create different light patterns on the wall. You can make it look like windows or like palm trees. I just chose this for, I don't really know. I also don't know what it looks like. I just like it. But that's just that coming from the Amaran 60X with the spotlight with the gobo insert. So there's a reason why I go with almost everything from a lighting perspective in here with Amaran. It's because I can connect to the Sidus Link app. So I'm about to talk to you about exposure, why having a monitor is so valuable, and even a little bit about white balance and how to get your tones to look good. This is an ultimate crash course. But one of the reasons I like having all this connected, besides the fact of being able to turn everything off and on with just a tap, which is kind of cool, and not having to go click all those toggles on all my lights would be kind of annoying. But what I can also do from here is I can actually, like that backlight, for example, I can actually take that and I can look at my monitor and I can just change the exposure of it for how much of it's coming in or not at all, and just see what that's actually doing to the scene, which I think is a huge benefit for getting all your lighting tuned in to see real time what's happening, as opposed to like record, change something, go back and look at it, see what happened. You can change like all your lighting with this app, which is pretty fantastic. And this is a big piece of what I was talking about with like having, why I like having my key light to be able to change the temperature on it, because it can actually help manipulate the actual tones of the backlight here. This isn't a perfect, I got my windows open, there's a ton of light tones in here, but the point will still get across. Let's say that I wanted that white behind me to be like a pure white, which I find that having a slight cool cast to it makes it appear a little more pure white as opposed to a warm cast. Without changing anything back there at all, just by manipulating my key light and my in-camera white balance setting, I can change how the background actually looks. So typically, key light in the camera should match on the white balance. Not always, but typically. I'm going to bring my key light down to 5,000. So it's going to warm up a little bit. And if I go on my camera and I actually change it to match that, the background is automatically going to get a lot more, not a lot more, but a little more blue tone to it, which will make it appear as like a pure white. So just by having a key light that has the ability to change the Kelvin setting and the temperature and then matching the camera, you can actually manipulate your tones in your scene pretty heavily. So this background desk, spoiler alert, it's another uplift desk. It's probably my favorite desks I've ever had. But it serves as a background, kind of like to the main angle, kind of gives a different like feel to the main angle, a little bit of complexity to it. But it also provides me a second angle if I want to record something from like very similar to what you're looking at right now, but like a second angle from here too. It's also a different texture for a top-down style shot. And it has become my main editing station for those longer editing situations. Not only because I just like raise this to get a standing if I want to change my position from seated to standing for those longer ones, but it also just has like a really cool feel to the space, a nice creative space to edit in. One thing that helps this desk pop in that main angle shot and not get like lost in the shadows, I have another aperture Amaran tube light up top to be able to just push a little bit of light straight down and hit the desk. And that Amaran light is on the second vari-pole in the studio. And this uplift desk is a walnut butcher block, like solid wood. This thing is sturdy. I think it has a really nice look to it. They absolutely nailed it with this one. I think it looks really cool against like the black slat wall here. But this walnut desk, the nice thing here, again, similar to the other one, is that you can customize it. So I didn't want it to be like a big long desk. I wanted a little bit shorter one back here for obvious reasons in this smaller space. And that adjustability from seated to standing for those longer editing sessions, like I mentioned, is key. Although I kind of don't want to get out of this chair half the time. This is another Uplift product. It's the Uplift Pursuit chair, which I never knew how much I needed a really high quality chair in the office until I had this. And for how much adjustability and how comfortable this thing is, I think it still maintains a very minimal and modern look that looks fantastic in the space. And for my top-down shots, I used to like rig a whole top-down setup like from one of the crossbars of the many angles I have up here. But I actually just use, I don't even know the brand of this. I got it on Amazon. I remember it being not all that expensive, and it's actually surprisingly good. I just connect it to the desk, whether I'm on like this walnut or the main angle surface, like kind of changing the different like tones I can get, and just like connect my camera and I'm done. So I found this to be just like a really nice little like hack as opposed to like rigging an entire top down. So the monitor that I'm using back here for my editing is just, it's a Sony M9 monitor. I found Sony monitors to just be really color accurate. I'll typically, for the background on this screen, I'll typically just throw like something that I put together from Photoshop with one of my recent photos. It has kind of a cool look in that main angle, like in the background. But this also is on an arm for the exact reason of what you guess, which is micro adjustments and being able to not only have those adjustments for when I'm like editing and want it to be the right height, but also I can actually get that just right, whether it's the second angle frame, maybe I want part of it in or out or show something on camera. And the arm itself is from Amazon, surprisingly high quality, but it has everything that I need. It's really sturdy, just mounts right to the desk. I can even make it go vertical, so I think that thing is pretty nice. Mic system I'm running back here is the Rode Pod Mic USB. I just like it because it's pure black as opposed to the original Pod Mic, but good quality here, pretty straightforward. It's just on a Elgato New Wave Magic arm, I think. I forget the exact of what that one is, but minimal, good look to it, easy to hide cables. Like that whole setup a ton. And I usually record that back to my F3 that we looked at earlier, my Zoom F3 that records in 32-bit float. I just bring that back here. I'll just connect my audio for this microphone, and then I hardwired another, yes, to clean power, another USB-C charge cable for constant power, and now my audio interface is all set up back here. I just picked up an acoustic slat wall. I just got black panels, hung them up on the drywall with pretty minimal amount of screws. We're in an apartment. You can't screw those up too much, but I just put those up. I think it's from Wayfair. You can find acoustic slat wall panels like almost anywhere at this point. I think they're totally worth it. Kind of does provide, I mean, to be honest, like there's not a lot of reverb in this specific room in terms of like audio reverb off the walls, but having acoustic panels is going to help the audio nonetheless. If you're in like a room with like a bunch of wood floors or a huge space, they're probably going to help out even more. But I do like these a lot for the audio benefit, but to be honest, it's a lot more about the look. I think they look fantastic. But even if you got a great studio, to make it look good on camera, you have to master your white balance, which is what we looked at a little bit earlier with changing the tones of the background, but there are some whole new levels to that, which is exactly why I put together this video that's gonna help you deep dive and get that mastered. I'll see you in the next video. Take care. See ya.